They told the neighborhood I was hoarding water during a drought. They called it a temporary community solution. It took me 11 minutes to shut off the line they never had permission to touch, and 290,000 gallons later, they learned the difference between authority and ownership. I bought the property for the well, not the house, not the view, the well. I'm a civil engineer by trade. Water systems, pressure regulation, municipal compliance. I've spent 20 years designing infrastructure people never notice until it fails. Quiet work, precise work, the kind that rewards patience and documentation. The lot sat just outside the formal boundary of the Willow Ridge HOA. That detail mattered. My driveway connected to their main road, but my parcel predated their development by almost 40 years. The well on my land was registered with the county long before the HOA existed. Deep-drilled, artesian-fed, tested annually, fully permitted. The first time I met Karen Whitmore, she introduced herself as acting president of the HOA. She didn't ask if I wanted to join. She handed me a packet. Community compliance guidelines, she said, smiling without warmth. We've had issues with independent properties affecting shared aesthetics. I glanced down at the papers. Architectural standards, landscaping rules, fine schedule. I'm not part of the association, I told her evenly. She tilted her head. Your access road runs through HOA property. Under a recorded easement, I said, filed in 1982. That was the first flicker, the moment she realized I wasn't going to nod and comply. After that, the visit started, always framed as concern, just checking on runoff patterns. Residents are worried about groundwater depletion. We're in a drought advisory. She'd stand at the edge of my gravel drive, heels sinking slightly into the dust, clipboard pressed to her chest like a shield. Her eyes scanned everything, my pump house, the pressure tank, the irrigation layout I'd installed for the orchard behind the barn. Every time, I stayed calm. I kept my permits in a waterproof binder in the workshop, county well logs, annual pump output reports, inspection certifications. I showed her copies once. She didn't look at them. Instead, she started sending letters, formal ones, notice of review, potential impact assessment, community resource protection inquiry. They weren't legally binding, they just sounded like they were. I responded to each in writing, certified mail, concise, professional. Property not subject to HOA authority, well usage within state-regulated limits, no shared utility infrastructure. That last line mattered. No shared utility infrastructure. About 2 months in, I noticed something small, a new PVC access cap near the edge of my rear fence line, fresh trenching marks in the dirt, backfilled but not settled. I knelt down and brushed the soil with my hand. The compaction was wrong, too loose, too recent. I checked my property survey that night. The trench line ran exactly along the boundary marker, but the cap sat 6 inches on my side. 6 inches is not an accident. I didn't confront her, not yet. Instead, I installed 2 additional cameras, low profile, infrared, motion activated. One pointed at the pump house, one toward the boundary line. I also pulled my historical pump data. My system logs flow rates automatically. Every gallon drawn is time-stamped. That's when I saw the curve, a slow, steady increase over the past 6 weeks. Not dramatic, just enough to look seasonal. Except irrigation season hadn't started. My orchard was still dormant. I ran the numbers twice. The baseline output had risen by nearly 4,800 gallons per day. Every day. Pressure fluctuations confirmed intermittent draw. Early morning, late evening, patterns that matched neighborhood peak usage. I stood in the workshop listening to the faint hum of the pressure tank cycling more often than it should. The relay clicked softly, steel against steel, mechanical. Obedient. Someone had tied into my well, and they were doing it carefully. Not enough to trigger alarms, just enough to siphon. I requested updated county maps the next morning. There was no permit for a shared lateral line, no recorded utility easement, which meant if a connection existed, it wasn't legal. 3 days later, Karen showed up again. We've had some residents complain about water pressure inconsistencies. If your well is impacting the aquifer, it's not, I replied. She stepped closer this time, close enough that I could smell her perfume, sharp, citrus-heavy. We may need to conduct an inspection. Of what? Your system. You don't have that authority. Her smile didn't falter. We'll see. That was the moment the pressure changed. Not harassment anymore. Escalation.
If you enjoy the video, please subscribe. I was out of town for 2 days on a consulting job when it happened. My phone buzzed at 6:12 a.m. Motion alert. Rear boundary camera. I opened the live feed from the hotel room. Karen stood beside my pump house. 2 men in reflective vests were with her. Neither wore county insignia. No marked vehicles, just a white pickup with magnetic lettering that read, Willow Ridge Utilities Committee. That committee does not exist in any municipal structure. They used bolt cutters on the secondary lock. I watched the metal snap in real time. They entered the pump house. One of them gestured toward the pressure manifold. The camera captured everything, time-stamped, audio-enabled. "This is a temporary community interconnect," Karen said clearly. "The board approved emergency access under drought mitigation authority. No such authority exists for a private well." One of the men opened the rear panel. I heard the clank of tools, the hiss of pressure release. I didn't call her. I didn't call the police. I called my attorney. Then the County Water Resources Office. By noon, I had confirmation. No emergency declaration, no interconnection permit, no HOA authority over private groundwater systems. I drove home that night. They had installed a lateral bypass line. Clean work, technically competent. It fed under the boundary trench I'd noticed and into the HOA's main distribution loop. They'd been drawing from my well for weeks before forcing the pump house entry. The new connection just made it direct. I downloaded my full system logs. Total excess draw over 61 days, 289,734 gallons. I rounded it in my notes. 290,000 gallons. At state-assessed replacement and energy rates, that wasn't symbolic theft. That was measurable loss. I sent a formal cease and desist letter the next morning. No response. Instead, I received an email blast forwarded by a neighbor. Subject line, Community Water Stability Update. Karen had announced that Willow Ridge had secured supplemental groundwater access to protect property values. She never named me. She didn't need to. That was her mistake, because now it was documented misrepresentation. I met with the county inspector 2 days later. We walked the property line together. He examined the trench, the interconnect, the unauthorized pump house modification. He took photographs, issued a violation notice, and ordered immediate disconnection pending investigation. Karen responded by calling a special HOA meeting, accusing me of sabotaging community resources. That was when I calculated the shutoff sequence. 11 minutes. That's how long it would take to isolate my system, depressurize the bypass, and remove the unauthorized coupling without damaging my own infrastructure. All legal, all within my property rights. I scheduled it for 6 a.m. Saturday. Peak irrigation cycle. I recorded the entire process. When I closed the main valve, the pressure drop registered instantly on their side. By minute 7, their loop alarms were triggering. By minute 11, the illegal line was capped, documented, and boxed as evidence. I didn't yell, I didn't threaten, I sent the county the footage, and I waited. Because now the numbers were public record, and the reckoning was procedural.
The emergency HOA meeting was standing room only. Neighbors I'd barely spoken to filled the folding chairs. Some looked confused, others defensive. Karen stood at the front with a projector slide that read, Independent Water Hoarding and Community Risk. Then the county inspector walked in. 2 deputies followed. Not aggressive, just present. Professional. He requested the floor. I stayed seated until he invited me forward. I brought 3 binders. Pump logs, video stills, certified letters, violation notices. When the footage played, bolt cutters, forced entry, her voice authorizing the interconnect, the room shifted. Not dramatically, just the subtle sound of people recalibrating. The inspector outlined the violations: criminal trespass, utility tampering,
theft of services, unauthorized infrastructure modification. Estimated value, based on metered draw, 290,000 gallons. Restitution calculated accordingly. The HOA's insurance representative, who had not been informed of the supplemental access, went pale. Karen tried to argue emergency powers. The inspector cited statute. She tried to frame it as misunderstanding. The deputies referenced the forced entry footage. By the end of the meeting, 3 motions had been filed. Immediate removal of Karen as HOA president, independent forensic audit of HOA actions, civil recovery proceedings for damages. Criminal charges followed 2 weeks later. Not dramatic, not televised, just paperwork, court dates, fines, restitution. The HOA's reserves took a significant hit covering legal costs and infrastructure corrections. A formal apology letter was issued to me, signed by the new board. They removed the illegal trench, repaired the boundary, filed corrective disclosures with residents. No one cheered, no one clapped. It wasn't that kind of ending. A month later, my pump cycled at its normal baseline again, steady, predictable, quiet. The orchard bloomed on schedule. No more early morning pressure drops, no more letters. Control restored, not through anger, but through documentation. I didn't cut their water out of revenge. I cut it because it was mine, and I only needed 11 minutes to prove it.